I don't think so. I had a DNA test hoping I'd find some Jewish ancestry and I came up negative, so
You, okay,
regretfully.
got you. But did you know the Holmans in Sheboygan?
I know the name. It's quite popular up here. Yes.
Yes.
Lovely. So everyone, just to let you know, we are now we're streaming on Facebook. So, I mean, it's fine, just so everyone knows.
How many are there in the synagogue right now?
I think about 10 or 12.
Oh, nice.
I think I haven't been there in a little bit.
Bob, that's pretty loud, it seems to me.
It sounds great for us here, Rabbi.
Are we streaming already?
We are.
Oh,
That doesn't look like the most comfortable seat in the house, Rabbi.
well, I want to wish all of you a Shabbat Shalom. It is with this Shabbat segueing now into Tisha B'Av that we come to the lowest point of the Jewish year, the saddest time of all, the day that commemorates the destruction of the first and second temples. We understand the second temple was destroyed because of Sinat Chinam, this hatred between people, hatred that drove each other apart. Even if they couldn't remember what they hated each other for, the hatred just continued, so much so that tradition has it, even though we rebuilt the first temple after 70 years, the second one hasn't been rebuilt. It is a message for us in these days, in this time, where we see hatred all around us. But again, we still leave with hope as the day the fast is completed tomorrow night. You'll hear it even in some of the words that are chanted. We heard it in the Havdalah this morning, that there still is redemption after destruction. We're doing things a little differently tonight. We did want to share Havdalah together, which we've done once or twice every month during the pandemic. And we're doing Havdalah early tonight. Very traditionally, when Tisha B'Av begins on Motzei Shabbat on Saturday evening, you hold off Havdalah on the wine until Sunday night. But we're doing this before our mincha service, and we're doing it in a sense then before Tisha B'Av really begins. So we'll be still sharing some of the wine here. And what's most important, I still think, as we come together for Havdalah, wherever we are, whether you're joining us on Zoom or here in the sanctuary, or any of the other platforms, that Shabbat, again, both we see it in the Havdalah candle tonight, in the challah last night, that it is somehow a bringing together into a unity, into one. The braided challah, all twisted together into one. The Havdalah candle, in a sense, taking the candles of Shabbat and again weaving them together into the one. That's what we have to do too, that we have to come together. that we have to be concerned about each other, that we have to care for the other, that we have to see in the face of the other a trace of God. And so we will begin our Havdalah service with the lighting of the twisted candle. And even in the other activity, which I know is taking place tonight here in Milwaukee, in the end, the only way a group of people can overcome adversity is by coming together as a team. One person cannot do it by oneself. As together we begin.
La ya ya la 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 ya la ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la la ya la la ya 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 la 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 ya la ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la la ya la la Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen borei peri hagafen ya 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 la 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 ya la ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la la ya la la ya 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 la 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 ya la ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la la ya la la Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei minei v'samim borei minei v'samim ya 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 la 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 ya la ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la la ya la la ya la ya la 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 ya la ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la la ya la la Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei meorei haesh borei meorei haesh ya 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 la 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 ya la ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la la ya la la ya la la ya 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 la 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 ya la ya la 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 ya la 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 ya ya la ya la la ya la la Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam המבדיל בין קודש לחול, המבדיל בין קודש לחול. יא 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 לה 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 לה, יא לה יא לה 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 לה, יא לה 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 לה, יא לה לה יא לה לה, יא לה יא לה 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 לה. Ya la ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la la ya la la ya la la ya la ya la 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 ya la ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la la ya la la ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la la, ya la la. Eliyahu Hanavi, Eliyahu Hatishbi, Eliyahu, Eliyahu, Eliyahu Hagiladi, Bimhera Beyamenu, Yavo Elenu, Mashiach ben David, Mashiach ben David, Eliyahu Hanavi, Eliyahu Hatishbi, Eliyahu, Eliyahu, Eliyahu Hagiladi, Hamavdil ben Kodesh Lecho, Chatotenu Yimcho, Zarenu v'chaspenu, Yarbekecho, v'hakochavim b'alayla, Shavuatov, 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 a good week, a week of peace. May gladness reign and joy increase. A good week, a week of peace. May gladness reign and joy increase.
We now begin to move into Tisha B'Av, that saddest day of the Jewish year.
We are going to begin with the evening, the Ma'arif service, which you can find in a moment, the slides in front of you, or if you have a Siddur for in the sanctuary, on page 4. You'll notice that many of the tunes, as the rabbi mentioned, since this is such a somber day, a somber occasion, as we commemorate the destruction of the temples and many other calamities that have befallen the Jewish people, many of the tunes will be in a very plaintive tone, and this will carry through the melodies that we have, and also throughout the lamentations, the keynote, the readings that will follow after the service. So we begin our service with Baruch, which you can find again on the screen in front of you or in the Siddur and those in the sanctuary. And if you're able to at home, please rise for the Baruch. Baruch Hu et Adonai HaMevorach. Baruch Adonai HaMevorach le'olam va'ed. Baruch Adonai HaMevorach le'olam va'ed.
As we continue together, Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, אשר בדברו מעריב ערבים, בחוכמה פותח שערים, ובתבונה משנה עתים ומחליף את הזמנים, מסדר את הכוכבים במשמרותיהם ברקיע כרצונו. בורא יום ולילה, גולל אור מפני חושך וחושך מפני אור. מעביר יום ומביא לילה ומבדיל בין יום ובין לילה. אדוני צבאות שמו. אל חי וקיים תמיד ימלוך עלינו לעולם ועד. ברוך אתה אדוני המעריב ערבים.
אהבת עולם בית ישראל, עמך אהבת, תורה ומצוות וחוקים ומשפטים, אותנו לימדת. על כן אדוני אלוהינו, בשוכבנו וקומנו, נשיח בחוקך, ונשמח בדברי תורתך, ובמצוותיך לעולם ועד. כי הם חיינו לאורך ימינו, ובהם נגה יומם ולילה. ואהבתך תשים ממנו לעולמים, ברוך אתה אדוני, אוהב עמו ישראל. שמע ישראל, אדוני אלוהינו, אדוני אחד. ברוך שם כבוד מלכותו לעולם ועד. ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך. והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך, ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם, בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך, ובשוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם לאות על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך, למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם אמת. Well, I guess we will be continuing with the words on the screen for those of us who are here, because these are not the words in the Siddur. So up there, standing on the parted shores of history, we still believe what we were taught before ever we stood at Sinai's foot, that wherever we go, it is eternally Egypt, that there is a better place, a promised land, that the winding way to that promise passes through the wilderness, that there is no way to get from here to there except by joining hands, marching together. מי כמוך באלים אדוני, מי כמוך נדר בקודש, נורא תהילות, אוסף אל נורא תהילות, אוסף אל מלכותך, ראו בניך בוקי הים, לפני משה ומרים. זה יענו ויאמרו, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד. ונאמר, כי פדה אדוני את יעקב, וגאלו מיד חזק ממנו, ברוך אתה אדוני גאי ישראל. אשכיבנו אדוני אלוהינו לשלום, V'hamidenu shomrenu l'chai. Baruch atah Adonai, haporesh sukat shalom aleinu, v'al amo Yisrael ve'al Yerushalayim. Blessed are you, eternal guardian of Israel, whose shelter of peace is spread over us, over all your people Israel, and over Jerusalem. Yitkada v'yitkada shemei Rabba.
Amen.
V'yamad yivrach chirutei v'yamlik machutei. B'chayechon v'yamechon v'chayedecho beit Yisrael. B'agala v'zman kariv imru. Amen. Yehesh merabah mevorach. Ve'olam u'lalmei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitbar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh. V'yitadar v'yitalev v'yitalash merigudesha b'richu. Le'ela mikol b'chata b'shirata tishbechata v'nechemata. Tamiram b'yama v'imru. Amen.
As we rise, you'll find the Tefillah, page 74,
We'll
or on
read-
the screen.
Yeah, we'll read as we often do the first three prayers, the first three blessings together, and then we'll continue silently in our prayer books, and also for those on Zoom, you'll be able to follow along on the slides silently as well through Oseh Shalom. Adonai sifatai tiftachu fi hagi tehilatecha. Adonai sifatai tiftachu fi hagi tehilatecha. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu Elohei Avotenu ve'imotenu Elohei Abraham Elohei Yitzchak Elohei Yaakov Elohei Sarah Elohei Rivka Elohei Rachel Elohei Leah האל הגדול הגיבור וחנורא אל עליון גומר חסדים טובים וקונה הכל וזוכר חסדי אבות ואימהות ומביא גאולה לבני בניהם למען שמו באהבה מלך עוזר ומושיע ומגן ברוך אתה אדוני מגן אברהם ועזרת שרה אתה גיבור לעולם רנאי מחיי מתים אתה רב להושיע מוריד אתה מחכה חיים בחסד מחיי מתים ברחמים רבים סומק נופלים ורופא חולים ומתיר אסורים ומקיים אמונתו לשני עפר מי כמוך בגבורות ומדומה לך מלך ממית ומחיה ומצמיח ישועה ונאמן אתה לחיות מתים ברוך אתה אדוני מחיי המתים אתה קדוש ושמך קדוש וקדושים בכל יום יהללוך סלע ברוך אתה אדוני האל הקדוש. Ose shalom bimroma, Uyase shalom aleinu ve'ako Yisrael ve'imru amen. Ose shalom bimroma, Uyase shalom aleinu ve'ako Yisrael ve'imru amen. At this point, we're going to transition both literally and also in the service to the next part of the service, to the part where we will read from the book of Lamentations, the book of Echa. This is a book that's 5 chapters long, and it's an alphabetical acrostic. Traditionally, you read 22 verses in the first, second, fourth, and fifth chapters, and you read 66 verses, but they're short verses, the triple acrostic in the 3rd chapter. It's a very plaintive melody that you'll hear. The nusach, the te'amim are very, very plaintive, and as is the message. We will be chanting a certain number of verses, sometimes 3, 4, 7 verses from each of the chapters, and also we will be doing readings. We have something that was introduced last year because we're now in the midst of, hopefully we're getting towards the end of COVID, but we have Megillat COVID. So we have another reading that was composed by a very talented author. We'll be reading those chapters as well, singing some moving songs, and also hearing from a poet in our midst. Sherry Blumberg has written a beautiful poem as well that we'll be honored to hear her read as well. So as we transition into Galut, in a sense, away from the bima, farther away, and we're going to go over to these chairs over here, into the Galus, in a sense. Metaphorically, we will be singing Avinu Malkeinu and Al Naharot Bavel. You'll find the slides as we go along on Zoom, and everyone else in the sanctuary should have a packet. Steve, did you get a packet when you came in? You have it, good. So as we transition, there are 12 chairs and there are 12 of us, so it should work out. We will transition over to the chairs if you feel comfortable. There's a tradition, if you'd like, you can sit on the floor. You can move the chairs to your particular bubbles if you need to move them a little bit. But we'll transition over there as we take our packets and as we begin to sing Avinu Malkeinu and Al Naharot Bavel. Avinu Malkeinu, Chonenu Vanenu. Avinu Malkeinu, Chonenu Vanenu, Hien Manu Masi. Aseh Imanu, Tzedakah V'Chesed. Aseh imanu tzedakah v'chesed v'hoshienu. Avinu malkeinu, chonenu vanenu. Avinu malkeinu, chonenu vanenu, hien banu masi. Aseh imanu tzedakah v'chesed. Aseh imanu tzedakah v'chesed v'hoshienu. Al naharot Bavel, al naharot Bavel. Nasham yashavnu gam bachinu bezochrenu et Zion, bezochrenu et Zion. Al naharot Bavel, al naharot Bavel. שם ישבנו, גם בכינו, בזוכרנו את ציון. בזוכרנו את ציון. I'd like to invite Sherry Blumberg now to read this poem that you created.
From out of Babylon. From out of Babylon we come. Don't look back. We have enough salt statues in our past. So many who have died, so many who will limp out, a few who will return whole. Oh, the walk back is hard, and we will come into our old new land among the gravestones, and all of us are wondering, pondering, shouting out, will my family community be whole? To our current and our new Jerusalem we come. We will seek old new friends among the lucky, the vaccinated. The many of us will be seeking and inquiring, returning, and many wanting all, wanting home. What will we find? Where will we find it? What was lost and what was learned? We return or move on this day of remembering the good and the heroes, the losses and the stumbling blocks, our history, our generation's plague, this temple, our home. From out of isolation we come, looking into old new faces. Grant us healing and rejoicing among the old new tzibur. We sought courage and discernment this year. Dear God, bring us home.
Thank you very much. As we now continue, for those who have the packet on page 5, with the first 3 verses in Hebrew of chapter 1. Echa yasheva v'adat ha'ir rabati am ha'ita ke'almana rabati vagoyim sarati bamdinot ha'ita lahamas bachol tiveke balai Vedimata al lecheya ein la minachem mikol ohaveha kol re'eha bageduva hayula le'oyevim Galeta Yehuda me'oni umerov avodah hi yashva v'goyim lo matze'am hanoach kol rodefeha hisiguha Ben HaMitzarim. Thank you, Cantor Berkowitz, for chanting the first 3 verses. We now turn to Megillat Kovid, the first chapter, this written, titled Alas, written by Tisha Arlen. We invite Lois Brasner to read this first chapter of Megillat Kovid.
Alas, the city, all the good things of a city, these marvelous people, and all that push and that pull, all that effort and disputation, those meetings and glorious conversations, and all those show-offs and all the crowds that love to watch and listen to them. All that science and knowledge, the teaching and that learning, all this glorious movement of air and breath. Alas, the city shut down. The city cries, we have lost our hearts. Blessed holy wholeness, breathing us in and breathing us out, we forgot to give thanks.
As we continue, you can hold on. As we continue singing the words, by the waters of Babylon. By the waters of Babylon, we lay down and wept for thee, Zion. We remember thee, Zion. By the waters of Babylon, we lay down and wept for thee, Zion. We remember thee, Zion. We remember thee, Zion. We continue with the words of chapter 2 of Eicha, and we will chant these verses, the first 3 verses, in English, using the trope of Megillat Eicha. Alas, the Eternal has covered with a cloud the daughter of Zion in God's anger. God has cast down from heaven unto earth the splendor of Israel. God has not remembered God's footstool in the day of God's anger. Brought waste without pity by the Eternal are all of Jacob's habitations. God is thrown down in God's wrath. The stronghold of the daughters of Judah, God has brought them down to the ground. God has polluted the kingdom and its princes. Cut off by God in fierce anger is all the horn of Israel. God has withdrawn God's right hand in the presence of the foe. God is burned in Jacob like a flaming fire, which consumes everything. Now I'd like to invite Norm Malman to read the second chapter of Megillat Kovid, Alas, God's Anger.
Alas, God's anger. Let's assume that God, however you understand or don't understand God, is irked. It's only logical, yet it's unclear which irks God the most, the lies or the greed and corruption. Or is it a package deal? But perhaps these are only sins against people, not sins against God, so as to be dealt with during Elul. While we work out it amongst ourselves, because we have our say, we have our lawyers, our judges, our prisons, our protests, our actions, our votes, and everyone knows what you've done. But for the sins against the oneness, prepare yourself to be weighed and found wanting. You reveled in how you broke out our connection to the whole. You are appalling. You attacked our hearts and you used our fear against us. These are sins against God, the ones that break true connection, and it is known who and what you are. Alas, God's anger is fierce and deserved.
As we continue together singing Eli, Eli. Eli, Eli, shelo yigamer leolam, hachol v'hayam, rishru shel hamayim, berak hashamayim, tfilat adam. Hachol v'hayam, rishru shel hamayim, berak hashamayim, tfilat adam. O God, my God, I pray that these things never end. The sand and the sea, the rush of the waters, the crash of the heavens, the prayer of the heart, the sand and the sea, the rush of the waters, the crash of the heavens, the prayer of the heart. We continue now with the third chapter of Eicha. Here we have, as I said before, traditionally 66 verses. They're in groups, they're triplets. You'll notice as we begin, Aleph, 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 then Bet, 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 Gimel, Gimel, Gimel. As it goes through the alphabet, it's an acrostic, and it has a slightly different melody from the tradition of the other four chapters, 1, 2, 4, and 5. And there is kind of a Western European tradition that we'll start with, and then an Eastern European tradition. Ani hagever oni b'shevet evrato oti nahag vayolach choshech velor ach bi yashuv yahfoch yado kol hayom bila b'sari ve'ori shibar atzmotai banalai vayakaf rosh utra'ah b'machashakim hoshivani Yemetei olam gadar badi velo etzeh ichbid nechashti gam ki ezad vashaveya satam tefilati gadar derachai begazit netivotai yivan. We continue now with Gloria Krasno on Zoom, who will share with us the third chapter of Megillat COVID, Alas, Loneliness. But I think you need to unmute.
Alas, loneliness, eating, sleeping, walking alone, TV, Facebook, prayer alone, coughing, crying, dying alone. Alas, loneliness, I am so frightened. I weep, and who will hear me?
Thank you. We continue with Oseh Shalom. Oseh Shalom bimroma uyaseh Shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'imru amen. Ose shalom bimromav, uyase shalom aleinu ve'al kol Israel ve'imru amen. Ose shalom bimromav, uyase shalom aleinu ve'al kol Israel ve'imru amen. Now we invite Cantor Berkowitz to read the first 7 verses of chapter 4 in Yiddish. Vis faret unkels das Gold, faret in das teure Feingold, die heilige Steine zu Schatten in alle Eckgassen, die teure Kinder von Zion mit Gingold geweugen, wie seinen See gerechnet, Farlemene Krieg, gemacht von Ateperes Hand, Afilu Sheat allen Sin, ois die Brust, gewein Zeugen sehr junge, die Tochter mein Volk ist an Achser geworden, also wie Streus Fegelen in der Midbar, die Zunge von dem Zeugedicken ist zugeklebt. So sein Gummen von der Erstigkeit, kleine Kinder, Bettenbräut, und keiner brächt sie nicht ab. Die was pflegen essen, teure Speisen, seinen Wist in die Gassen, die der Zeugen in warm Milreut, tullen sich zu häufend, warum die sind von der Tochter mein Volk ist größer die der Chet von Stom, was ist übergekehrt geworden wie in Arege. Oi, und Hem zumal seinen nicht gefallen, auf ihr erfrischten seinen Gewohn, Läuterer von Schnee, weißer von Milch, Gräutleter auf in Leib von Karaln, Sapirstein, sehr Geste out. Thank you. As we continue now, Sherry Melman reading the 4th chapter of Megillat Kovid, Alas, Compassion.
Alas, compassion. You were willfully foolish. You were cruel and used hate as a tool. In your greed and stupidity, you ignored the degradation of our planet and the answers of science. And look where it's led us. Species and forests disappear. Old people and the poor are sacrificed. Essential workers, disproportionately people of color, are used and discarded and die in disproportionate numbers. Racism is celebrated, misogyny extolled. Where is normal human empathy? It is so creepy. We grieve for the sick and the dead. We grieve for the murdered and the neglected. We grieve for all we have lost and will lose. Alas, compassion. Pray for mercy.
Thank you. As we continue together with the words of Ani Ma'amin. Ani Ma'amin, Ani Ma'amin, Ani Ma'amin. Emuna Shelema, Beviat HaMashiach, Beviat HaMashiach, Ani Ma'amin, Ve'af al pi she'itmamea, Im kol ze ani ma'amin, ani ma'amin, ani ma'amin. We now continue with the last verses of chapter 5, starting verse 19. David Blumberg will chant in Hebrew, and I will chant responsively in English, and feel free to join us as you'd like.
Ata Adonai leolam teshev bis'achecha ledor vador.
Oh, eternal, you remain forever. Your throne is from generation to generation.
Lama lanetzach tishkachenu ta'azvenu leorech yamim.
Why will you forget us forever and forsake us for so long a time?
Ashivenu Adonai elecha v'nashuva Chadesh yameinu kekedem.
Turn us unto you, O eternal, and we shall be turned. Renew our days as of old.
כי אם מאוס מאסתנו, קצפת עלינו עד מאוד.
Can you have rejected us so utterly? Can you be so greatly angry with us?
השיבנו אדוני אליך ונשובה, חדש ימינו כקדם.
Turn us unto you, O eternal, and we shall be turned. Renew our days as of old. So we turn now to Audrey Berman, who will read the last chapter of Megillat Koved, Alas, Memory.
Alas, memory. We remember those who died by virus and those who died by police, those who died by gas and those who died by suffocation, those who died by infection and those who died from neglect. We remember those who were shot in trenches and those who died alone in the ICU, those who died by starvation and those who were shot in the back, those who died with the knee on their neck, and those who died hanging from a tree. And because we remember, we resist our privilege if we have it. We resist racism when we see it. We resist cruelty and stupidity when they beckon. We resist lethargy and despair when it calls us. Alas, memory. We remember and promise to change ourselves and the world, returning to our true selves via holy conversation, sacred disturbance, and necessary trouble. Amen.
Amen. As we continue with the words of Hashivenu, the last verse of Echa, which ends on a hopeful note. Hashivenu, Hashivenu, Adonai elecha,
השיבנו,
ונשובה,
אדוני אליך, ונשובה,
Hashivenu, Hashivenu, Adonai elecha, ונשובה, ונשובה, חדש, חדש, ימינו כקדם. חדש, חדש, ימינו כקדם. So we turn to page 24 to Elit Zion. This is one of the most famous keynote of Tisha B'Av, a liturgical dirge that was written to bring out the essence of the commemoration. And you'll see in the translation, wail, O Zion, with your cities, like a woman in bitter anguish, like a maiden girt in sackcloth for the husband of her youth. The chorus, Elit Zion, we're very familiar with, and we have used this throughout the service to chant the prayer of Michamocha, also of Oseh Shalom earlier in the service. We'll be using it for Vene Emar when we come up to Aleinu. And you'll notice in the verse that's here, Ale Galut, you see the Gimel, perhaps if you're able to see, it's bolded. This was also an alphabetical acrostic, and we're left at the moment, at least in this version, with Gimel and Daled, but it was again a 22 verse or 22. It went through the alphabet. Maybe there were 12 of these verses going from Aleph through Taf. So we have Elitzion, and then we'll go to this verse incorporating Ale Galut, and we'll go back to the verse, to the chorus. Elitzion ve'areha kemo isha v'tzireha v'chibtu lach aguratzak abal neureha ale galut meshalteel mani meshir zemareha ve'al damam asher shupach kimo memeye oreha elitzion ve'areha kimo isha v'tzireha v'chivtu la chaguratzak al baneureha. And for those who are able, we turn to Aleinu and we rise for Aleinu. עלינו לשבח לאדון הכל, לתת גדולה ליוצא בראשית, שלא עשנו גגויי הארצות, ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם בגורלנו ככל ההמונה. ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים, לפני מלך מלכי המלכים, הקדוש ברוך הוא.
Let the time not be distant, O God, when all shall turn to you in love, when corruption and evil shall give way to integrity and goodness, when superstition shall no longer enslave the mind nor idolatry blind the eye. O may all created in your image become one in spirit and one in friendship, forever united in your service. Then shall your realm be established on earth and the word of your prophet fulfilled. The eternal will reign forever and ever.
ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד ושמו אחד ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד ושמו אחד.
Our thoughts turn now to those who have departed this earth, our own loved ones, those whom our friends and neighbors have lost, the martyrs of our people whose graves are unmarked, and those of every race and nation whose lives have been a blessing to humanity. As we remember them, we meditate on the meaning of love and loss, of life and of death. As we take a few moments to remember our own loved ones, those who have perished for this year, the 608,000 Americans, so many millions more around the world, all those who have perished in the Jewish tragedies and destructions over time. And if there is anyone who is observing Yortzeit or still in mourning during this time, if you have a name to mention as I come around, just raise your hand.
Max Berkowitz.
And if there's anybody on Zoom who wishes to mention a name, if they are in mourning or observing Yortzeit, I guess not. And so you'll find the words of Kaddish either before you or on page Well, you'll see it in the next page in the packet here, page 30.
Yitkadal v'yitkadash
Shemei Rabbah. Amen.
Amen.
Yomad yivrach yirutei v'yamlich malchutei v'chayechon uv'yamechon uv'chayei d'chol bet Yisrael ba'agalah uv'zman kariv v'yimru.
Amen. Yehei Shemei Rabbah Bavarach Le'olam Yomei Almaya.
Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitba'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal Shemei d'kudisha
Brichu.
Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tush b'chata v'nechemata da'amiran b'yalma v'yimru
Amen.
Amen.
Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya v'chayim aleinu v'yal kol Yisrael v'yimru
Amen.
Amen.
Oseh shalom bimromav hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu v'yal kol Yisrael v'yimru.
Amen.
Amen.
May the one who makes peace in the high heavens above help us find ways to make peace here on earth, as together we all say.
Amen. I'd like to take a moment to thank our readers who participated in the service, to Sherry Blumberg for composing this very meaningful poem, to our readers of Megillat Kovet, to Lois Brasner, Norm Malman, Gloria Krasno, Sherry Malman, and Audrey Berman, to our chanters of Megillat Echa, to cantor Jerry Berkowitz and David Blumberg, to our little impromptu choir or two-part chorus that we had here, thanking Lois Brasner and David Blumberg, and also Cantor Berkowitz as well. And to Andrew Appel for showing the slides this evening, and also to Bob Brasner for providing the the camera work, for operating the cameras this evening as well. And we will conclude our service with Beyado, which you can find on the next slide or on the last page of the pamphlet. Beyado afkiduchi be'etishan ve'ayira ve'imruchi geviati Adonai li ve'lo ira ve'imruchi geviati Adonai li ve'lo ira. My soul I give to you, my spirit in your care. Draw me near, I shall not fear. Hold me in your hand. Draw me near, I shall not fear. Hold me in your hand. My Beyado, my spirit in your care. Draw me near, I shall not fear. Adonai li ve'lo ira ve'imruchi geviati Adonai li ve'lo ira. A meaningful fast to those who are fasting, and a meaningful day.